Hello campus, this will be our very first video. I'm very excited to welcome you to the ABCD Bootcamp. My name is Daniel Adeni and I will be anchoring this particular course. So let's get started. We are here, as you know, you ought to have completed this today, but we delayed, so we are very sorry for that. Nevertheless, you have to complete both this and this by this coming Sunday, that is next Sunday. Okay, let's get started. So you have already gone through the introduction to programming as a skill and a language. I will be taking you on this. Let's get right into it. Yes. So what are software tools exactly? Software tools are a set of programs that are used by a developer to create, maintain, debug, collaborate, and ship software applications to end users. Software tools may be classified into different things. But let's back up a little bit, give ourselves a little bit of geek time. Now, let me tell you what geek time is. Geek time is a period of pauses in our programming course where we're going to pause a little bit and speak to you one-on-one to make sure you get what exactly we are talking about. So a little bit of geek time on software tools. Software tools are anything that has to do with software creation, that is development, software maintaining, software debugging, software collaborating. So we have various software tools out there like PHP, Java, Android, whatever this is, Linux, Docker, Node.js, Git. There's GitHub somewhere around here too. And we have JavaScript, Laravel, HTML, CSS, Node Package Manager, Elasticsearch, MongoDB, React, Apache, one of the biggest in software development. I mean, the web wouldn't exist without Apache and all their proprietary softwares. And then we have the AWS, which is like what is currently giving Jeff Bezos millions every month. All right, then, let's get right into it. Yes, so platform and operating system. I have divided the software tools into 6. I'm pretty sure there are more than 6, but I've decided to divide them into 6 for our understanding. The first software tool we'll be talking about today are platform and operating system. Remember, I said software tools are any set of programs that are used by developer to what? Create, maintain, debug, collaborate, and ship software applications to end user. What does it mean to ship software application? Shipping software application is like you finish building, you want to send it to the users. So there are various ways to ship software application. One is like on the Play Store, on the App Store. You can build an APK and put it on your website. You can also put it on the Windows Store, depending on the software you're building and the platform you're building it with. So software tools can be divided into 6. Actually, it's more than that, but we decided to use 6. The first one is the platform and operating system. These are like the main. Without these ones, there won't be anything like softwares. The first one we are going to talk about is Android. I'm very sure you're familiar with Android. I'm pretty sure 50% of you are studying this course on an Android platform or operating system. Another one is iOS, and we are calling it the iPhone, the legendary Steve Jobs introduction in 2007. The next one is Windows, built by what's his name again? Bill Gates, yes. Built by Bill Gates, right? Way back in the 20th century. In the 20th century, yes. The next one is Linux, which is currently what is running on my computer. I moved away from Windows last month. So those of you still on Windows, good luck. Yeah, except you have a very powerful system, Windows is very annoying. So the next one is Unix. Then we have Chrome OS, developed by Google. Then we have BlackBerry, the legendary BlackBerry. BlackBerry could have won the world. Have you seen the BlackBerry movie? Go and check it out. There's a new movie that came out recently called BlackBerry. Go and watch it. It's an awesome movie. It tells the story of the developers of BlackBerry and why they didn't win, why the company became defunct eventually, why the company didn't boom. I mean, this company was ruling the phone industry for years. I mean, it's awesome. For almost 20 years, they've been ruling. They were unstoppable, but they made one mistake. They didn't consider you and me. They built their platform to be proprietary, not open source. Developers couldn't come into their phone and build apps. Remember BlackBerry then? Give me your BB pin. That was the only thing. WhatsApp couldn't run on BlackBerry. I mean, people couldn't build apps to run on BlackBerry. The only person that can build apps on BlackBerry is BlackBerry. I mean, what the heck is that? Google came and said, you know what, everybody come and build on our platform. Then that guy with a turtleneck came, what's his name again? Steve Jobs, and said we are calling it the iPhone. So BlackBerry, let's not forget BlackBerry. They built the industry. And then we have Nokia, the guy that flew so high and later went into hiding somewhere around the time that Microsoft bought it. Now, after platform and operating system, we have another awesome set of software tools called frameworks. You might be wondering, what the heck is frameworks? Now, platform and operating system are where you put your codes, where your codes will run. You can actually build a platform. I mean, you can, but it will take a long time. You can use the Linux. I've been thinking about it, building my own operating system with the open source Linux OS. And then we have the framework. Frameworks are awesome for one major thing. What do they do that is different from other software? Frameworks takes all the nitty-gritty of software development, because there's a lot of stress when it comes to developing software, a lot that you have to go through. But what frameworks do is that they help you do most of those unnecessary stress and let you focus on only what is important. For example of framework is Rails. Not very popular. One is Flutter, probably the most popular framework in Flutter. I mean, everywhere you go, there's a Flutter developer. Flutter allows you to develop code from one code base. So usually in the olden days, you have to build your app for Android using Java. You build your app for iOS using Swift. You build your app for Windows using C Sharp. You build your app for Linux using C. You build your app for Unix. You build your app for Chrome OS using Google's particular one. You can build for BlackBerry, like I said. You can build for Nokia using Windows or Windows C Sharp too. So it's kind of stressful building different. You want to build like a Uber app now. You have to employ almost 10 developers, each with his own programming language, to build for the different platforms that we have. By the way, this is not the only platform that we have. So frameworks came up and said, frameworks like Flutter came up and said, you know what? Why don't you code in our own language? Flutter uses a programming language called Dart. Why don't you code in our own language? And whatever you do, you code in our programming language. Will help you to transpile it. That is, let's say you write, let's say programming language are like normal languages in the world. There's Yoruba, English, Chinese, Japanese. There is all these other Swahili and all these different languages in the world. So and I said, you know what? Why don't you write your language in English, and when you put it into our framework will interpret it to all other languages. So you don't have to go through the stress of writing everything. That's the awesome thing with the Dart and the Flutter programming language. Yes. So the Flutter framework, So and we have other frameworks like React. There's this popular debate around that who is better, Flutter and React. I don't know what you have heard outside, but me, I will tell you, Flutter is better. Don't tell anybody. Flutter is better for one reason. React is made by Facebook. Facebook built React so its developers can build apps better. It didn't really mean it for people to build apps when Mark Zuckerberg built React. So React is always updating itself, but Flutter is supported by Google. And remember, who owns most of the software tool in the world? Google. Better know what you are doing and learn Flutter. I'm just joking. You can learn anyone you want. Currently, I'm working with React. React is what we use to build the Monagri, the platform and the Monagri developer platform. React is awesome. You can't build web applications with Flutter. You can actually, but it won't have a lot of support like SEO. You know what? Let's stick to the course outline before the team start complaining. So, Angular, another web framework. Now, there are frameworks. Not all frameworks can help you develop apps on all these platforms. There are some frameworks that are meant for just one platform. There are some frameworks that can run on any platform. Flutter can run on Windows, it can run on Linux, it can run on Chrome OS, it can run on Android, it can run on iOS. Yes. But something like React is built for just web only. It's built for just web only. React is exclusively for web. So we have one that helps React developers to develop apps for Android and iOS. It's called React Native. React Native. We have Angular. Angular is built for web only. It's built by Google. We have .NET. The .NET framework is for building Windows application. We have Django, it's a Python framework. We have Bootstrap, it helps you develop CSS better. We're going to get to CSS, it's part of the things we are doing. Probably week, I think it's week, sorry, I think CSS is week 2. Yeah, next week. So yeah, let's get to it. And we have Flags. Now we have talked about the platform and operating system. We have talked about the frameworks. Let's talk about SDKs. Now a lot of you have been asking me so far, Mr. D, what the heck is SDK? What is SDK? SDK stands for Software Development Kit. Have you ever seen an engineer before that is going to install a solar panel, or any engineer at all going to do electrical works? You will see that they carry a box, some kind of a box that looks like suitcase, that will contain their screwdrivers, their pliers, their screws and whatnot. Now this box is called a kit. It's called an engineering kit. The same way engineers have their big box of everything inside, we have our own called software development kit. Although you can't see the box obviously, but software development kits are like a collection of APIs and libraries for developing apps on a particular operating system. You have to be very careful. SDKs, software development kits, are not, when people are always asking what's the difference between SDK and APIs. SDK is a collection of APIs and libraries. It is a collection of all these things. So you need to be very careful. SDKs are like, when we have a big box that contains everything we need, that's what an SDK is. And also, it is used for a particular operating system. So when you get an SDK, that SDK is meant for just one operating system, or some SDKs too are meant for frameworks. For example, we have the Flutter SDK, which is meant for Flutter framework. Oh yeah, it's up there already. So the Flutter SDK is meant for the Flutter framework. I've divided SDK into two. We have the main SDK that are built by the people that build these things, and the third-party SDK that are built by people like us, the Monagri Web SDK, which you'll be getting to by week 4. Now, the main SDK are like things like Android SDK. Let me take you to the Android Studio. We'll talk about what Android Studio is shortly. Android Studio must have something called the Android SDK. You can't develop apps without this Android SDK. It is very, very important. When you want to develop Android apps, you need the Android SDK. You need it. You can't escape it. And the Android SDK I'm using is the SDK API 34. This is Android 13, if I'm not wrong. There are other, yes, this is Android 13. Android 14 is the one I'm using. And then Android 13 was the one I was using before. And then there's Android 12, there's Android 10, and there's Android 5, which was the original one. And then the other Android, they are no longer supported. And these SDK tools are very important when it comes to developing Android apps. And we also have we also have the iOS SDK, we have the Mac OS SDK, we have the Flutter SDK. This is like the favorite SDK of every developer in Flutter. Flutter SDK helps you develop Flutter apps. It's very, very important. Like the Flutter SDK is very, very, very important. So we have the React SDK too. We have third-party SDKs that are built by particular companies for a particular OS. For example, if you want to use the Firebase service, Firebase is a cloud service that helps you manage your online database, they help you manage messaging, they help you manage a lot of things. We use Firebase a lot in Monagri. So Firebase, like Google, is a subset of Google Cloud, by the way. Firebase has a lot of libraries, like crazily, a lot of libraries. But if you want to use Firebase, will you not be downloading these libraries one by one? Let me show you something. This is very highly classified stuff, but I'm going to show you nonetheless. Let's go to Android and let's go to our Gradle file, build.gradle. Sorry, not this Gradle, this Gradle. When you look at this, we're using Firebase Firestore, we're using Firebase Storage, we're using Firebase Analytics, we're using Firebase Messaging, we're using Messaging Direct Boot, we're using Firebase Config, we're using in-app messaging, we're using a lot of Firebase services, and this is just one app. So to escape all this, we can just download the Firebase SDK and just maybe forget about all these things. The Firebase SDK will have everything bundled inside it. So I think you understand what an SDK, third-party SDK is. We have the Monagri Web SDK. Now, when you start developing with Monagri, you have the e-commerce SDK, you have the e-commerce library, you have the logistics library, you have the store library, you have the customer library, you have the notification library, a lot of libraries. So to save you all the stress, you can just get the Monagri Web SDK and use it from there. And we have the Firebase Web SDK. The SDK I just showed you, the libraries I just showed you is for Android only. There's the web one. We have the AWS SDK. Remember AWS, that service that's giving Jeff Bezos millions per month. We have the Facebook Android SDK. We have the Twitter SDK. Let's move to number 4, libraries. Libraries are you're probably very familiar with libraries. A collection of code that does a job or a bunch of related jobs. Just do one job only, or a bunch of related jobs. Libraries are just a collection of code. There may be NumPy. NumPy, some of you are familiar with NumPy. My machine learning developers in the house, shout out to you guys. NumPy is a machine learning library for Python that allows you to manipulate numbers, by the way, arrays and everything. We have TensorFlow, we have jQuery. jQuery allows you to perform certain function in JavaScript. We have the React libraries. React libraries are libraries built for the React nature, e.g. material icons. If you want to show icons in your React app, you will need the React library. We have Algolia. Algolia is for full text search. If you want to integrate search into your app, people can search in your app and search for things. Maybe you built a movie app and you want people to be able to search for things, you get the Algolia. We have Dojo library. So please, let's move to API, and I'll tell you the difference between libraries and API. API, unlike libraries, you don't really download APIs, you don't install APIs. API stands for Application Programming Interface, and it is exactly what it sounds like. A bunch of codes for other apps to communicate with a particular app. So let's see, for example, Monagri helps businesses to build their stuff, and Monagri helps businesses to build their stuff, get their e-commerce and logistics websites online. And we initially build this to run just on our own. Initially build this to run just on our own platform, and now we are introducing it to developer. We are going to release something called the Monagri API. You see, API, let me tell you, geek time now, geek time. API is that bridge between you and your application and someone else's application. So let's draw this. Let's say you built let's say you are building a ride hailing app. Let's call it Enoch Rider. Mr. Enoch, shout out to you. I remember Enoch from our premiere event. I love that guy. Enoch Rider. And then there is a location system. Google Maps now. Google Maps. So Google Maps now, it helps index the location all over the world. And you're going to need Google Maps if you are building something like Uber for people to see where they are going to. Now, what connects your own app after you build your own wonderful Enoch Rider app, and you want to talk to Google Maps to ask Google Maps what's the distance between Ojuelegba and Yonopadia, or what is the distance between Ojaoba and Futa. You want to know the distance, not just a line of sight between them, but you want to know the distance when you follow a particular road. What's the distance between Oja and Futa if I follow, let's say I follow Ilesha Garage, or I follow Awule? So you want to know the distance, exact distance. You can't just talk to Google Maps API straight away. You will need something to talk to Google Maps API, and that thing is called you will need something to talk to the Google Maps app, and that thing is called API. It is what connects you to Google Maps. Without it, you can't communicate with Google Maps. Usually, APIs are bundled into an SDK or a library. So it comes with the SDK or library, so you don't have to download it separately. There is the Monagri API. It is bundled into the Monagri SDK. There is the Flutterwave API. Let me tell you a little bit of Monagri API. I'm sure the next course is going to do that in detail, but let me just tell you a teensy little bit about the Monagri API. The Monagri API Monagree helps businesses store information about their product, about their pricing and everything. You're not building a website. Let's say you are building a delicious. You are building an app called Delicious Fantasy. It's a food app, awesome food app. Let's say this app was built by, who is my next favorite person again? I'm trying to remember someone else from our premier event. Uh, let's see. Edison, Mr. Edison. Mr. Edison. So Mr. Edison built an awesome app called Delicious Fantasy for food restaurants to manage their business. And then this app needs a backend. You need to manage database, you need to manage payments, you need to manage notification for when someone orders for something, you need to manage tracking for when someone orders for something. You can't just go through that stress. Monagree will not do it for you. But to now connect your app to Monagree, you need what? Who can guess what you need? You need the Monagree API. Without the Monagree API, you can't connect to Monagree to get. So when you connect to Monagree API, an example, you can say Monagree API dot get product. So you just get the product information for the person that owns Delicious Fantasy, and you show it on your own webpage. Don't worry if you don't understand this. We'll get to it in detail by week 4. Now, we have the Flutterwave API. The Flutterwave API allows you to connect to Flutterwave to make payments. We have the Paystack API, Google Maps API, just as I described here. And then we have the Playform API, which is what we are currently using to run this website, this e-learning website. We have TouchNote API. I'm sure some of you must have heard of TouchNote in footer. And then, last but not the least, let's talk about IDEs, Integrated Development Environments. You might be wondering, what the heck is IDE? It's a software application, it's an app on its own. That's point number 1. That helps programmers develop software code efficiently. The first one we're going to talk about is Visual Studio. Visual Studio is used to develop Windows app. Remember these guys, these platforms and operating system, they have their own official IDE. What does IDE stand for again? Integrated Development Environment. Without the IDE, you might not be able to compile codes for them. So, Visual Studio. Visual Studio is for developing Windows app. We have Visual Studio Code, which is what we are going to be using in this program. So I'm going to introduce you on how to install it shortly. But let me show you Visual Studio Code. This is Visual Studio Code. Editing Evolved. It's one of the best IDEs in the market, because it's not for a particular language. It's for you to write multiple languages. You can write Flutter here, you can write React, you can write Java, you can write Python, you can write anything you want to write. But to compile them, you need the official IDE. But don't worry, we'll get to that shortly. And then another IDE is Android Studio, primarily for Android apps. This is Android Studio. You see, Java. This is our admin app for the Playform admin app. Don't copy our code, but this is how it looks like. And then let's go back. JetBrains Studio. We have NetBeans. We have Eclipse, IntelliJ IDE, and we have PyCharm. We have Python IDE. I'm sure some of you might have used this Python IDE. It's very popular stuff. Also, let me give you a quick snip. Python IDE is the simplest. You can even run it from a terminal. That's one of the awesome things about Python IDE. You can run it from a terminal, you can run it anywhere. So this is an example of a Python IDE. This is a Python IDE 3+3. I'm running a Python code right now. A is equal to Adeni. This isn't part of what we are doing, but just to show you the IDE, Python IDE. So close this terminal. So let's install Visual Studio. Now go on your system right now. Pause this video. I hope you're on your system. The first thing you want to do is to go to open a new tab. Then search for download Visual Studio Code. Then after searching for download Visual Studio Code, it's going to take you to the Visual Studio official website, where you see this icon here. Just click this download. They have the IDE for Mac OS, Linux, Windows, And then there are some of you that says you are studying with your phone. For those of you studying with your phone, um, don't worry, just continue with the course. We are going to send in an app that will allow you to do exactly the same thing. Since it's just web development we are doing, you can do it from your phone. But when it comes to Android development and all those other operating systems, you might not be able to do it on your phone. Nonetheless, let us get this show started. Why is this taking too long? While that is loading, let me show you other stuff I intended to show you. Computer operating system, Windows, Linux, Mac OS, Macintosh, BlackBerry. I've told you about BlackBerry. No. Don't forget to, if you have the time, just watch that BlackBerry movie. Node.js, we have Symbian, and then iPad, server, and then frameworks, Rails, um, React, Laravel, Apache, Falcon, Xamarin, this is Xamarin. So go to this place. Now you are going to find the release, different releases. This is for Windows. You can just download, click this download for Windows. If you are using a Linux system, I would advise you download the deb.deb one. And you can also download the RPM for Red Hat and Fedora and SUSE. But if you are using Ubuntu or you are using the Debian distro, download the .deb OS. And then if you're using Mac, just download this. It's very simple. Download it and install it. So if you're using Linux, after you have downloaded the Visual Studio stuff for okay, I thought I have it here. Okay, so just download the one for yours and you're going to arrive at this page, and then the next set of course are going to continue from here. So guys, this has been a wonderful run. We have spent 26 minutes, more than I expected, and I hope you guys have been able to comprehend this. Daniel out.